activities and synergies with the university. And a good example for it, just back 1994, the very first social responsibility report was published by University of Polytechnics in Turku in Finland. And it was the very first example where a university took responsibility and wanted to show the engagement, the regional engagement, the local engagement, and the value for a local community of this university. What are our institutional realities? Increasing autonomy, but sometimes we forget that almost 70% of our budget is based on our staff costs. So this is the core value. Increasing third-party funding. Everybody is running for the money. We get more and more entrepreneurial universities. We pay more and more attention to increase the quality of management. It's moving from administration, execution of the law, into design, developing the institutions, and of course, as I mentioned, third mission activities. If we look to the other side of the knowledge alliances, in the direction of the companies, about 80% of the stock market value is in intellectual wealth. They pay quite high attention to value and process orientation and IT support. Why I'm saying this? Because in my observation as also not only a manager of a university, but also doing research in higher education development, that we have to pay much more attention to our own values, to our own assets. And we have to develop an institutional asset management related to intangible elements. What are the general problems in the field? I'm not going through each of these bullet points. There are certain issues which I think we have to follow. When it comes, for example, to development of new projects, who is going to make a decision that we develop a proposal, for example, for a national fund, or in our case, for a European fund? Is it the professor? Is it the dean? Is it the rector or a president? These days, we see a kind of inflation in developing proposals at universities. So many of my colleagues doing proposal writing, this became a kind of professional job at our universities. In the very same time, because of this increasing number of proposals, the success rate is going down. So compared to 10 years ago when we had a success rate by 25%, nowadays this rate is about 3 to 4%. So what's about these resources what we are going to invest? The staff resources, developing proposals, developing new ideas. So at the end, I think we need certain processes to be able to manage the notion of entrepreneurship and the idea of innovation. Of course, we have to identify the values, the ideas, the inventions. I'm not talking about innovations, I'm talking about inventions. We need a kind of qualification of these inventions. Then we have to capture them to be able to develop an intellectual asset. Of course, we need a monetary valuation to be able to judge about the value of this invention. We have to protect it. We have already heard about patents, one way of protection. Utilization, and then coming back to the benefits for the university and stakeholder at large. For this reason, we developed a software which helps to manage these processes of assets, of intellectual wealth at universities. I'm not going deeper in this solution because I don't have time, but I'm happy to talk to you in the break about this solution. Just a few words at the end about my university. as I mentioned, more than 15 years ago, we're a very special mission, developing lifelong learning in Austria and for Europe. Some facts. Nowadays we have about 7,000 students, a budget about 40 million euros, and the own earnings about 80%. When I joined the university 10 years ago, we had about 50%. So in the last 10 years, we more than doubled this figure. So if I may say, if you look only this figure, my university is an entrepreneurial one. There are, of course, some reasons for this success story. And you could use these bullet points, I think, in most of the cases. Professional management, entrepreneurial culture, time to market, continuous development, new professionals. But I think, in fact, what we need is a cycle, moving from the strategy, talking about and developing our processes throughout re-engineering. Of course, the limitation is the human behavior. So we need a very solid, very strong change management. And of course, also an IT support, which helps us as an enabler to follow up our strategy. As I mentioned, the European strategy is to develop third mission activities, to look to knowledge alliances, and create an entrepreneurial culture across Europe. To be able to do this, we need an effective and efficient management, new professionals that are able to deal with these issues. We have to develop new trainings, a new type of leadership, and of course, an institutional culture for entrepreneurship and innovation. And of course, we need enablers like an intellectual asset management system or other process management systems which help us to come up or follow up our strategy. I would like to end up with a picture of my campus. And I think when we are talking about entrepreneurship and innovation or our third mission, it's pretty much like, if you look to the right side on the picture, you would see a traditional university. Solid building, stays for ages or hundreds of years. This is a traditional university as we see in Europe. If you look to the other side of the picture, you see a modern building. This is about innovation. This is about future. This is about new missions, new activities. And if you look between these two buildings, there are bridges. And I think this is the most important element, to be able to bridge this traditional notion of a university, focusing on the first and second mission, and the third mission aspects of part of this university, and to create these bridges to be able to survive and to be able to successful in the future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you indeed. الدكتور أتيلا تكلم عن ما هي الأساليب التي اتبعها الاتحاد الأوروبي لدعم الإبداع وريادة الأعمال. لماذا اهتم الاتحاد الأوروبي بهذه القضية؟ ما فائدة الإبداع وريادة الأعمال؟ أيضا تكلم عن المهمة الثالثة للجامعات، ما هي عناصرها، كيفية إمكانية تحقيقها. الآن يفتح المجال للأسئلة. حناخذ 3 أسئلة من